For weeks now, something hasn't been adding up. Despite repeated claims of advances on the ground, despite bold announcements and carefully worded statements, progress has remained limited. Engagements continue, but breakthroughs remain elusive. And when momentum stalls, decision-makers look elsewhere. That's where long-range systems enter the picture. Missiles, drones, standoff strikes. For Russia, these tools have become a fallback, a way to apply pressure when advances slow or withdrawals become unavoidable. Waves of long-range drones have crossed into Ukrainian airspace, causing serious disruption and infrastructure damage over time. Ukraine knows this pattern well, and instead of reacting, it prepared. What unfolded next wasn't loud at first. It didn't begin with headlines, but it may prove to be one of the most consequential shifts in recent months. Because Ukraine didn't strike a frontline position. It struck the system behind the system. In the early hours of January 13, deep inside Russia's Rostov region, a carefully planned operation reached one of the most sensitive points in Russia's military supply chain. According to confirmed reports, Ukraine's security service carried out a precision strike against a facility central to Russia's drone production network. The location was Taganrog. The target, the Atlanta Aero plant. This facility wasn't chosen at random. Atlanta Aero plays a role across the entire production cycle, from design and assembly to testing and electronic components. It is part of the backbone supporting Russia's drone-based strategy. The strike triggered fires and multiple explosions, indicating that more than just surface structures were affected. Initial assessments suggest that production areas and key workshops were damaged, with equipment destroyed and operations disrupted. Importantly, this was not about spectacle. It was about capacity. Atlanta Aero is linked to the production of several unmanned systems, including long-range platforms that Russia has relied on heavily. Among them is the Molniya drone, a simple, low-cost design that can be produced quickly when facilities are intact. That simplicity is exactly what made it dangerous. Cheap materials, basic construction, high output. As long as factories function, numbers can be maintained. But remove the factory and the equation changes. Reports indicate that missiles, not drones, were used in this operation, allowing for greater precision and impact. Production buildings, testing facilities, and workshops tied to electronic warfare components were all reportedly affected. That last detail matters. Electronic warfare systems help compensate for gaps in air defense. They disrupt guidance, interfere with navigation, and complicate interception. When those systems aren't built, vulnerabilities widen. In other words, this strike didn't just reduce output, it weakened protection. And this wasn't an isolated engagement. On the same night, Ukrainian forces conducted additional strikes across occupied territories. Air defense systems were hit. Radar assets were damaged. Ammunition depots were destroyed. Each action applied pressure from a different angle. Taken together, the message was clear. This was coordinated. Taganrog itself is not new to this pattern. The same facility was targeted months earlier, but this time the impact appears deeper. Visual evidence from the area showed extensive fires and smoke plumes rising above the industrial zone. Even if repairs are attempted, recovery will take time. Weeks, possibly months. And during that time, production slows. Losses accumulate. Adaptation becomes harder. That matters because Russia's reliance on long-range drones has increased significantly. Data from independent monitoring groups shows a sharp rise in drone launches over the past year. Not incremental, but exponential. Thousands per month. Each one requires components, assembly lines, testing. Remove one link and the entire chain feels it. Meanwhile, Ukraine has not stood still. In an interesting twist, Ukrainian manufacturers have developed their own version of the Molnia concept, retaining simplicity but adding flexibility, lower cost, remote and autonomous operation, adaptable payloads, same idea, different execution. And that brings us back to January 13. By targeting Atlant Arrow, Ukraine didn't eliminate a design. It targeted the ability to mass produce it. This is a strategy focused not on dramatic single strikes, but on sustained disruption. Pressure applied over time. Elsewhere in Taganrog, another facility reportedly felt the impact that night. An aircraft repair and maintenance plant responsible for servicing key aviation platforms. Damage there complicates repair cycles and limits operational readiness. Again, not symbolic, practical. Across other regions, additional systems were hit. Anti-aircraft units, radar stations, concentrations of forces, equipment destroyed. Each engagement added friction to an already strained system. This wasn't about one dramatic moment. It was about cumulative effect. Russia's long-range campaign has relied on volume and persistence. Ukraine's response is targeting the mechanisms that make that volume possible. Factories, logistics, maintenance, and now missiles. The use of domestically produced missile systems signals another shift. It suggests growing confidence, expanding options, and an ability to choose tools based on mission requirements rather than availability. For decision-makers watching closely, that matters, because this wasn't just a strike. It was a signal that the space behind the front lines is no longer insulated. That distance alone does not guarantee security. That advances and withdrawals on maps tell only part of the story. The rest is happening deeper, quietly, methodically, and with intent. What comes next will depend on how quickly systems adapt, how effectively gaps are closed, and whether production can resume under pressure. But one thing is already clear. This was not the end of a sequence. It was the opening of a new phase. All of this highlights a broader shift in how the conflict is unfolding. Rather than relying solely on frontline engagements, Ukraine appears increasingly focused on shaping the battlefield far from the immediate lines of contact. By targeting production hubs, repair facilities, and logistical nodes, Ukraine is attempting to influence future advances and withdrawals before they even begin. Each disrupted supply chain, delayed repair cycle, or damaged workshop changes the tempo of operations weeks or even months down the line. Follow these developments closely. Like the video. Subscribe now. Stay tuned, because the next engagements may arrive sooner than expected.